3,600 years before Luke Skywalker was born, the galaxy got the worst surprise party ever thrown. A dead empire came back to life and decided everyone needed to pay for what happened 1,000 years ago. Here's what went down. Way back in 5000 BBY, there was a huge conflict called the Great Hyperspace War. The Sith Empire lost badly. Most of them perished. Their worlds burned, and the Republic thought that was the end of it. They were wrong, dead wrong. A group of Sith survivors managed to escape the slaughter. They followed this mysterious Dark Lord into the unknown regions, parts of space where nobody from the Republic ever went. Once they got far enough away, this Dark Lord did something nobody expected. He crowned himself the new Sith Emperor and started calling himself Vitiate. Now, Vitiate wasn't your average Sith Lord. This guy used the dark side of the Force to keep himself alive way longer than any normal person should live. We're talking centuries here. Vitiate just kept going, planning his revenge year after year after year. For over 1,000 years, the Sith Empire rebuilt itself in total secrecy. They weren't just sitting around either. Vitiate and his followers were busy, really busy. They started by building a whole new civilization out in the unknown regions. They established a capital on a planet called Dromund Kaas, a world covered in dark jungles and constant storms. Perfect for Sith, basically. They built massive pyramids and temples, created new academies to train warriors, and slowly assembled the biggest military force the galaxy had never seen. But here's the clever part. The Sith didn't just hide and build ships. They sent spies and agents back into Republic space. These people spent decades working their way into positions of power. They made friends with species like the Chiss Ascendancy way out in the unknown regions. They secretly funded criminal organizations and corrupt politicians. They even set up puppet governments on Outer Rim planets, all while the Republic had no idea what was happening. Think about it this way. While the Republic was going about its business, thinking the Sith were ancient history, there was this massive shadow network slowly spreading across the galaxy. Every smuggler they bribed, every official they corrupted, every ally they recruited was another piece on the board. The Sith were playing a game that lasted generations, and the Republic didn't even know the game had started. By 3681 BBY, everything was finally ready. The Sith Emperor had built an armada bigger than anything seen since the old wars. We're talking thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, and whole fleets of fighters, all constructed in secret factories beyond the edge of known space. They had battle plans for every major Republic system. They knew where every Republic fleet was stationed. They had the element of total surprise. The attack came out of nowhere. One day, Republic forces in the Outer Rim were going about their normal patrols. The next day, massive Sith fleets were dropping out of hyperspace and opening fire. No warning, no declaration of war, nothing. Just sudden, overwhelming violence. The first reports that reached the Republic Senate were so crazy that some senators thought it was a joke. Sith Empire. That was ancient history from their kids' bedtime stories. But as more systems went dark and refugee ships started flooding the core worlds with survivors, the terrible truth became clear. The Sith Empire wasn't just back. They were stronger than ever. Republic military commanders scrambled to respond, but they were caught completely flat-footed. Their fleets were spread out on peacekeeping missions. Their defenses were designed for pirates and local conflicts, not a full-scale invasion. Most Republic citizens had never even heard the word Sith outside of history class. The Great Galactic War had begun, and the Republic was already losing badly. Within days of that first attack, the Sith controlled huge chunks of the Outer Rim. Republic forces that tried to respond got ambushed by fleets that seemed to know exactly where they would be. Worlds that had been Republic members for centuries suddenly revealed themselves as secret Sith allies. The 1,000-year revenge plan was working perfectly. The galaxy was about to learn that some enemies never forget, and the Sith had been remembering their defeat for a very, very long time. The Sith Empire needed to make a statement with their first real target. They picked the one place that would hurt the Republic most and mean everything to the Sith. Korriban, the ancient homeworld of the Sith, the place where their whole civilization started thousands of years ago. Here's the thing about Korriban. After the Sith lost that old war 1,000 years back, the Republic took over the planet. They stationed Jedi there, built military bases, and basically turned the Sith's most sacred world into a Republic outpost. For centuries, Republic forces had been walking around on ground the Sith considered holy. That was about to change. The Republic garrison on Korriban wasn't huge, but it wasn't small either. Jedi Master Cao Chen Darach was in charge, along with his Padawan Satil Shan. They had troops, they had an orbital station, and they thought they had everything under control. Nobody expected what happened next. Over 30 Sith warships dropped out of hyperspace right on top of Korriban. No warning, no build-up, just boom. 1 second empty space, the next second a whole battle fleet ready to attack. The Republic defenders barely had time to sound the alarm before the shooting started. The space battle was over before it really began. 30 ships against 1 orbital station and a handful of patrol vessels isn't a fight. It's target practice. While the Republic station was getting hammered, something worse was happening. Sith boarding parties were already moving. Leading the boarding team were 2 Sith who would become legends in this war. Sith Lord Vindican and his apprentice, who would later be known as Darth Malgus. These weren't your average warriors. Vindican was a master duelist, and Malgus was young, hungry, and absolutely ruthless. They cut through the station's defenses like they weren't even there. When Vindican and Malgus reached the command center, they found exactly who they were looking for. Master Darach and Satil Shan were waiting with their lightsabers ready. What happened next was one of those moments that changes everything. The lightsaber duel that erupted was fierce. 4 Force users going all out in a space station that was already falling apart around them. Darach was good, really good. He held his own against both Sith at the same time, giving Satil the chance she needed. See, Darach knew they couldn't win this fight. The station was lost, Korriban was lost, and if both Jedi stayed, they'd be lost too. So he made the call that heroes make. He ordered Satil to run, to escape with the information about the Sith's return, to warn the Republic about what was coming. Satil didn't want to leave her master, but she knew he was right. Someone had to survive to tell the galaxy that the Sith were back. She fought her way to an escape shuttle while Darach stayed behind, keeping the Sith busy. Master Darach fought like someone who knew they were making their last stand. He pushed Vindican back, held Malgus at bay, and bought every second he could for his Padawan to escape. But even Jedi Masters have limits. In the end, Malgus got through his defenses. The old Jedi Master fell, and the station belonged to the Sith. Down on the planet's surface, the Republic garrison was in chaos. Their orbital support was gone. Sith dropships were landing everywhere, and nobody could raise Master Darach on the comm. The Republic troops fought hard, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within hours, organized resistance on Korriban had collapsed. The speed of it all was the scariest part. The Republic had held Korriban for centuries, and the Sith took it back in less than a day. By the time the sun set on Korriban, Sith banners were flying over the ancient temples again. But here's the really embarrassing part for the Republic. The Jedi Council didn't even know Korriban had fallen until way later. Communications were cut so fast, the attack was so sudden, that the first reports didn't reach Coruscant for days. By then, the Sith had already moved on to their next targets. The Sith wasted no time reclaiming their heritage. They immediately reopened the old Sith Academy, started recruiting new students, and began excavating the ancient tombs. Korriban was a Sith world again, and they wanted everyone to know it. For the Republic, losing Korriban was a disaster. For the Sith, taking it back was everything. It was revenge. It was justice. It was coming home after 1,000 years in exile. The Great Galactic War had its first major victory, and it belonged completely to the Sith Empire. After taking Korriban, the Sith Empire went into overdrive. They weren't interested in taking planets one at a time. They wanted everything, and they wanted it now. The whole Outer Rim became their playground, and the Republic had no idea how bad things were about to get. The Sith started popping up everywhere at once. The Tingle Arm, the Aparo sector, places so far from the core that most Republic citizens couldn't even find them on a map. These regions had always been quiet, peaceful. That was about to change in the worst possible way. Now here's where the Republic made a huge mistake. They still didn't know Korriban had fallen. Communications from the Outer Rim were always spotty, so when reports came in about unknown ships causing trouble in the Tingle Arm, the Senate figured it was just pirates or some local uprising. They decided to send diplomats to sort it out. Yeah, diplomats. To deal with the Sith Empire. This small diplomatic ship jumped into the Tingle Arm expecting to find some angry colonists or maybe smugglers who got too ambitious. Instead, they found themselves staring at the biggest fleet they'd ever seen. We're talking hundreds of Sith warships just sitting there, waiting. The Sith commanders did something really clever and really cruel. They let the diplomatic ship send one transmission back to the Republic. Just enough time for the diplomats to basically scream about massive warships everywhere before the Sith opened fire. The transmission cut off mid-sentence. The Republic leadership got to hear their diplomats realize they were doomed. And then nothing. That was the point. The Sith wanted the Republic to be scared. They wanted those senators sitting comfortable on Coruscant to know that something terrible was coming for them. Psychological warfare at its finest. The Republic finally started to panic. They threw together a military fleet and sent it racing to the Outer Rim. But remember those secret allies the Sith had been cultivating for centuries? This is when they revealed themselves. The Republic fleet jumped into what they thought was friendly space and found themselves completely surrounded. Sith ships in front, behind, and worst of all, ships they thought were allies, suddenly switching sides and opening fire. The Republic fleet didn't just lose, they ran. It was complete chaos. Ships crashing into each other trying to escape. Commanders giving contradictory orders, nobody knowing who to trust. The survivors limped back toward the core with stories that made no sense. Allies becoming enemies. Impossible numbers of Sith ships, entire sectors already under enemy control. While the Republic fleet was running for their lives, the Sith made their next move. Sluis Van was one of the Republic's biggest shipyard facilities, the place where they built their warships, fixed their fleets, and trained their crews. It should have been heavily defended, but with the Republic fleet scattered and fleeing, Sluis Van was basically defenseless. The attack on Sluis Van wasn't a battle, it was demolition. Sith fighters poured into the system and started taking the shipyards apart piece by piece. Construction bays that had been building ships for centuries were turned into scrap metal. Repair docks full of Republic vessels were destroyed before they could even power up their engines. The entire orbital facility gone in a matter of hours. But the Sith didn't stop there. They occupied the whole Sluis sector. Anyone who wouldn't swear loyalty to the Empire had to leave or face the consequences. Republic military personnel had to go into hiding or get captured. Workers who'd spent their whole lives building Republic ships suddenly had to choose between serving the Sith or losing everything. In just a few weeks, the galaxy's map had completely changed. The Tingle Arm belonged to the Sith. Huge chunks of the Outer Rim were under Imperial control. Key facilities like Sluis Van were either destroyed or building ships for the enemy. The Republic had lost more territory in a month than they'd lost in centuries of small conflicts. Back on Coruscant, the Senate was in total chaos. Some senators still refused to believe these were actual Sith. They kept insisting it must be pirates with good marketing or some rogue colony with delusions of grandeur. They argued and debated while entire star systems fell. They formed committees to study the problem while the problem was busy conquering everything in sight. This political paralysis was exactly what the Sith wanted. Every day the Senate spent arguing about whether the threat was real was another day the Sith could grab more territory. Every senator who insisted on more evidence was basically giving the Empire free time to get stronger. The Republic was learning the hard way that the Sith hadn't just come back. They'd come back smarter, stronger, and with a plan that was working perfectly. While politicians argued about whether the Sith were real, the Jedi knew exactly what they were dealing with. The Sith were their ancient enemies, the ones they'd fought for thousands of years. The Jedi Council didn't waste time with debates or committees. They started sending Jedi Knights to the front lines immediately. The Jedi understood something the Senate didn't. This wasn't just another war. This was the old enemy returned, and if somebody didn't act fast, the Republic would fall apart before it even knew what hit it. Small teams of Jedi spread out across the frontier worlds. They didn't have huge armies or massive fleets, but they had something else. They had the Force, they had lightsabers, and they had the ability to inspire people to keep fighting when everything seemed lost. One group of Jedi reached the Minos cluster way out on the rim. The planets there were basically sitting ducks, completely exposed to the Sith advance. The Jedi worked around the clock, helping locals set up defenses, training militia groups, and preparing for the storm they knew was coming. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then the news networks got hold of the story. Suddenly, everyone in the Republic was watching footage of Jedi standing firm against Sith invaders. A single Jedi Knight holding a bridge against dozens of enemy soldiers. A Jedi Master organizing civilian evacuations while enemy ships closed in. These weren't just military reports anymore. They were stories of heroes fighting impossible odds. The effect was immediate and powerful. Citizens who'd been sitting at home wondering what to do suddenly knew they had to act. If the Jedi were willing to stand and fight, then maybe everyone else should too. Recruitment centers that had been quiet for decades were suddenly packed. Lines stretched around buildings, sometimes for blocks. Young people, old people, anyone who could hold a weapon or fly a ship showed up to volunteer. The Republic military had to open new training facilities just to handle all the recruits. Parents signed up because they wanted to protect their kids' future. Kids signed up because they'd grown up on stories of Jedi heroes and wanted to be part of something that mattered. Even people who'd never thought about military service found themselves in line, ready to do their part. The Senate finally snapped out of its confusion. Seeing millions of citizens ready to fight made them realize this was real, this was serious, and they needed to act now. Emergency sessions were called, war budgets were approved, and the entire Republic shifted into survival mode. Factories that built civilian speeders started making military vehicles. Shipyards switched from cargo haulers to warships. The whole Republic economy reorganized itself for one purpose: fighting back against the Sith Empire. By 3678 BBY, the Republic felt confident enough to try something bold. They got intelligence from a Sith apprentice named Exile Kresh, who'd supposedly turned traitor. She gave them information about Imperial fleet positions around Korriban. The Republic saw a chance to take back the Sith homeworld and deal a massive psychological blow to the Empire. A Republic fleet assembled in secret and jumped to Korriban, expecting to catch the Sith napping. What they found instead was a trap. The whole thing had been a setup. Kresh wasn't trying to help the Republic. She had her own agenda, and the Republic had walked right into it. The Sith were ready and waiting. The moment the Republic fleet arrived, they were hit from every direction. Sith warships, defense platforms, fighter squadrons, everything the Empire had stationed at Korriban opened fire at once. The Republic fleet fought hard, but they never had a chance. Ship after ship was disabled or destroyed. Escape routes were cut off. What was supposed to be a surprise attack turned into one of the worst defeats the Republic had suffered so far. The survivors who made it out brought back stories of complete disaster. But even in defeat, the Republic was learning. Around the same time as the Korriban disaster, Republic forces managed to pull off a smaller but important victory. The Sith had blockaded the Rimmer trade route, basically strangling Republic supply lines to the Outer Rim. Without supplies, Republic forces and civilians in places like the Minos cluster would starve or run out of ammunition. Republic Navy units regrouped and launched a coordinated attack on the blockade. This time, they succeeded. They punched through the Sith forces and reopened the trade route. Supplies started flowing again. It wasn't a massive victory, but it proved the Republic could adapt and win when they worked together. The Republic was finally in the fight for real. They'd taken their hits, learned some painful lessons, but they weren't giving up. The war that started with the Republic caught completely off guard had become a real contest. Both sides were digging in for what everyone now realized would be a long, brutal conflict. 10 years. That's how long the Republic had been losing. 10 years of watching planets fall, fleets get destroyed, and the Sith Empire grows stronger every day. By 3671 BBY, most people in the Republic had forgotten what winning even felt like. Then came Bothawi, and everything changed. The Sith Empire was feeling pretty good about themselves. They'd taken most of the Outer Rim without breaking a sweat. Now they wanted to push deeper into the Mid-Rim, where the real prizes were. Bothawi was perfect for their next target. It was the Republic's main communications hub for the entire region. Take Botha-Wui, and you basically made the Republic deaf and blind in half the galaxy. The Sith commanders thought this would be easy. The Republic had been running scared for a decade. Their forces were spread thin. Their morale was in the basement, and they'd lost every major engagement so far. What could possibly go wrong? Admiral Tol Greg had an answer to that question. He'd been watching the Sith advance for months, studying their patterns, and he figured out where they'd strike next. While the Sith thought they were being clever, Greg was already setting a trap. Here's what Greg did that was absolutely brilliant. He pulled together basically the entire Republic home fleet, every ship he could get his hands on, and parked them in orbit around Botha-Wui. Then he hid them. Used the planet's moons, debris fields, sensor jammers, everything he could think of to make it look like Botha-Wui was barely defended. When the Sith invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they thought they were looking at another easy win. A few Republic ships, some orbital platforms, nothing they couldn't handle. They moved in for what they thought would be a quick victory. That's when Greg sprang the trap. Republic ships came out of hiding from every direction. The Sith fleet went from predator to prey in about 30 seconds. They were surrounded, outgunned, and completely shocked. The battle was over almost before it started. The Republic fleet tore through the Sith armada like it was made of paper. Ships that had terrorized the Outer Rim for years were turned into floating scrap metal. The few Sith vessels that tried to run got picked off before they could jump to hyperspace. When the smoke cleared, an entire Sith invasion fleet was gone. Not retreating, not regrouping, just gone. The Republic had won its first real victory of the war, and it wasn't even close. The effect on morale was immediate. For 10 years, people had been hearing nothing but bad news. Now, suddenly there was proof that the Sith could be beaten. They weren't invincible. They could make mistakes. They could lose. The Sith Empire was furious. More than that, they were embarrassed. They couldn't let this stand. If one defeat could inspire the Republic this much, they had to crush that hope immediately. So they sent another fleet to Botha-Wui. Not just any fleet, a massive invasion force with 50,000 ground troops. This time, the Republic couldn't pull the same trick. The Sith knew about the fleet now, but the Republic garrison on Botha-Wui's surface wasn't going to give up without a fight. They activated planetary shields and dug in for a siege. Leading the defense was Jedi General Belth Alusis. He had maybe 4,000 soldiers against 50,000. The math was impossible, but Alusis didn't care about math. He cared about holding the line. When the Sith army landed and attacked, something incredible happened. The Republic defenders didn't break. They didn't run. They fought for every building, every street, every inch of ground. The Sith would take a position, and the Republic would take it back. The Sith would advance, and the Republic would counterattack. The casualties were staggering. For every Republic soldier that fell, 10 Sith soldiers went down. The Empire kept sending in fresh troops, and they kept running into defenders who simply refused to quit. Master Alusis was everywhere at once, rallying troops, holding critical positions, making the impossible look possible. Eventually, the numbers caught up. The Republic defenders were overwhelmed. Alusis and his soldiers made their last stand in the capital, fighting until they couldn't fight anymore. The Sith technically won the battle, but look at what it cost them. They'd lost so many soldiers that they couldn't actually hold the planet. They had to withdraw. Think about that. The Empire sent 50,000 troops to take a planet defended by 4,000, and they had to leave because they didn't have enough soldiers left to occupy it. Bothawi became a legend overnight, not because the Republic won, but because they showed they could make the Empire bleed. They showed that even when outnumbered, even when facing certain defeat, they could fight so hard that victory became meaningless for the enemy. From that moment on, the war was different. The Republic had found its backbone. As the war entered its second decade, Emperor Vitiate decided to play one of his nastiest cards. The Republic was getting better at fighting regular battles, so the Sith Emperor unleashed something that didn't fight with ships or soldiers. He sent out the Dreadmasters. These weren't your typical Sith Lords with lightsabers and anger issues. The Dreadmasters were 6 of the most twisted Force users the galaxy had ever seen. They specialized in getting inside people's heads, in making entire armies too scared to fight, in turning brave soldiers into cowering wrecks without ever showing their faces. Around 3668 BBY, Republic warships started vanishing. Not getting destroyed in battle, not surrendering, just disappearing. A patrol would go out and never come back. A convoy would jump to hyperspace and never arrive at its destination. Entire battle groups would simply stop responding to communications. At first, Republic Command thought it was some new Sith weapon, maybe cloaking devices or interdiction fields, or some other technology they hadn't seen before. They sent the Republic Strategic Information Service to investigate, and what the SIS found was way worse than any weapon. The Dreadmasters were doing this with their minds. From their dreadnought somewhere out in space, they were reaching out through the Force and breaking people. They'd make a ship's crew see things that weren't there. Monsters crawling through the corridors, their worst nightmares coming to life, their fellow crew members turning into threats. Entire crews would go mad from terror, abandon their posts, or turn their weapons on each other. Think about how scary that is. You're serving on a Republic warship, everything seems normal, and then suddenly your mind isn't your own anymore. The walls start closing in, shadows move when they shouldn't, and a fear you can't explain takes over everything. That's what the Dreadmasters could do from hundreds of light years away. For 13 years, these 6 Sith Lords had been traveling the galaxy on an Imperial dreadnought, staying hidden while they spread terror through Republic forces. 13 years of driving crews insane, of making fleets run from battles they could have won, of being the monsters nobody could find or fight. Once the Republic figured out what was happening, they knew they had to act fast. You can't fight an enemy that attacks your mind with conventional weapons. You need something special. You need the best of the best. Jedi Knight Jarek Kaden put together an elite strike team for what everyone knew was basically a suicide mission. They had to find the Dreadmaster's ship, get on board without being detected, and somehow take down 6 of the most dangerous Sith Lords alive before they could scramble everyone's brains. The mission was one of those moments where everything had to go perfectly, or everyone would end up dead or insane. The strike team managed to track down the dreadnought and slip aboard during a maintenance cycle when the Dreadmaster's guard was down. They moved through the ship like ghosts, taking out sentries and security systems without raising an alarm. When they finally reached the Dreadmasters, the confrontation was brief but intense. Even caught by surprise, 6 Sith Lords who could weaponize fear itself weren't easy to take down. But Kaden's team had trained for this. prepared mental defenses, and worked in perfect coordination. They managed to subdue all 6 Dread Masters before reinforcements could arrive. Here's where things got interesting. The Republic announced that they'd eliminated the Dread Masters, that these 6 Terrors were dead and gone. But that was a lie. The Jedi Order had decided the Dread Masters were too dangerous to execute. What if their deaths triggered some kind of Force backlash? What if the Sith Emperor could somehow bring them back? Better to keep them alive but contained. So, the Republic secretly transported the Dread Masters to Belsavis, a prison world so remote that most star charts didn't even show it. Deep beneath the planet's frozen surface, in stasis cells that kept them unconscious but alive, the Dread Masters were locked away. They couldn't terrorize anyone from those cells, couldn't even dream, just existed in frozen sleep. But the best part of the mission wasn't capturing the Dread Masters. When the strike team was on the Dreadnought, they managed to slice into the ship's computers. And what they found changed everything. For the first time, the Republic learned where the Sith Empire's capital was. Dromund Kaas, a planet hidden so well that the Republic hadn't even known it existed. They discovered Sith fleet positions, supply routes, and defensive strategies. Most shocking of all, they confirmed that the Sith Emperor really was over 1,000 years old. The same Sith Lord who'd led the Empire into exile all those centuries ago. The Republic finally knew who they were really fighting and where to find him. The Dread Masters were off the board, and Republic strategists had intelligence that would shape every battle to come. By 3667 BBY, the Sith Empire decided to go for the Republic's heart. They'd been conquering Outer Rim worlds for years, but those were frontier planets that most core world citizens barely thought about. Now they wanted to hit somewhere that would really hurt. They chose Alderaan. Alderaan was everything the Republic stood for. Beautiful mountains, peaceful cities, and a culture that valued art and diplomacy over war. It was one of the Republic's founding worlds, a place so peaceful they'd basically forgotten how to fight. If the Sith could take Alderaan, it would break the Republic's spirit. The Dark Council gave this job to Darth Malgus. Remember him from Korriban? The apprentice who'd taken down Master Darach was now a full Darth with a string of victories under his belt. Malgus was smart, brutal, and absolutely committed to crushing the Republic. Perfect for what the Empire had in mind. Malgus didn't just charge straight at Alderaan. He was too clever for that. First, he faked an attack on a completely different system. When Alderaan's defense fleet rushed off to help, Malgus changed course and headed straight for the now undefended planet. By the time anyone figured out what was happening, it was too late to call the fleet back. With Alderaan's skies empty of Republic warships, Malgus brought in his invasion force. Thousands of Imperial soldiers, war droids, and Sith warriors landed across the planet's surface. The peaceful valleys and forests of Alderaan became battlegrounds overnight. The early fighting went exactly how Malgus planned. Alderaan's local forces were brave but completely outmatched. Imperial troops pushed through their defenses like they were made of paper. Within days, they'd even captured the Alderaanian royal family and were holding them hostage. Things got so bad so fast that Imperial forces were already marching toward the capital city, ready to claim total victory. It looked like Alderaan would fall just like all those Outer Rim worlds. Another Republic planet conquered, another victory for the Empire. But Malgus had missed something important. The Republic had been using Alderaan as a stopover point for elite units heading to other battlefronts. Hidden in the forests outside the capital was Havoc Squad, the Republic's most elite special forces unit. These weren't regular soldiers. These were the best of the best, and they weren't about to let Alderaan fall without a fight. Havoc Squad launched a surprise counterattack on Malgus's command post. They hit hard and fast, using the forests they'd been hiding in to their advantage. At first, the Imperial forces held them off. Havoc Squad was good, but they were seriously outnumbered. It looked like even the Republic's elite couldn't turn this around. Then the cavalry arrived. Jedi Knight Satele Shan dropped out of the sky with Republic reinforcements. Yes, that's Satele Shan, the same Padawan who'd escaped from Malgus on Korriban all those years ago. Except now, she was a Jedi Master, and she had a score to settle. The forest battlefield exploded into chaos. Republic troops and Imperials fought between the trees, while Havoc Squad pushed deeper into enemy lines. But the real show was about to begin. Malgus and Satele found each other in the middle of the battle, and everyone else might as well have disappeared. This wasn't their first dance. They'd met over Korriban when Satele was just a Padawan running for her life. Now she was standing her ground, lightsaber blazing, ready to face the Sith Lord who'd haunted her memories for over a decade. The duel was everything you'd expect from two masters of their craft. Malgus had raw power and years of battlefield experience. Satele had speed, precision, and a connection to the Force that even other Jedi found remarkable. They fought through the trees, over streams, their lightsabers creating a light show that both armies stopped to watch. Just when it seemed like neither could gain the upper hand, Satele did something incredible. She gathered the Force around her and unleashed a blast of pure energy that sent Malgus flying. The Sith Lord crashed through trees and into the ground, badly hurt and barely conscious. The moment their commander fell, the Imperial forces lost their nerve. The retreat turned into a rout. Imperial soldiers abandoned their positions and ran for their transports. The royal hostages were freed. Republic forces retook every position they'd lost. Within hours, the Sith invasion of Alderaan was over. This wasn't just another battle. This was the first time the Empire had tried to take a core world and failed. The Republic had proven they could protect what really mattered. Malgus survived his injuries, but his reputation took a hit he'd never fully recover from. For the Republic, Alderaan was proof that the Empire could be stopped. For the Empire, it was a warning that the easy victories were over. The Sith Empire was getting frustrated. Every time they thought they had the Republic beaten, something went wrong. So the Sith Emperor and his advisors decided to try a different approach. Instead of more direct attacks, they'd starve the Republic into surrender, and they found the perfect partners for the job. The Mandalorians were the galaxy's most famous warriors. They lived for battle, trained from childhood to fight, and had been looking for a real war for generations. When Sith agents showed up offering them a chance to fight the Republic and the Jedi, the Mandalorians couldn't sign up fast enough. A new leader called Mandalore the Lesser had united the scattered clans with promises of glory and battle. Working with his Sith allies, Mandalore came up with a plan that was simple and devastating. They wouldn't attack planets or fight fleets. They'd just block the road. In 3661 BBY, the Mandalorian fleet took position along the Hydean Way. This wasn't just any trade route. The Hydian Way was the main artery connecting the outer rim to the core worlds. Almost everything the core needed came down this hyperlane. Food, fuel, medical supplies, military equipment, everything. One day, the route was open. The next day, Mandalorian warships were stopping every transport that tried to pass. The Republic's supply line had been cut like someone snipping a wire. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Within days, prices in the core worlds started climbing. Within weeks, shelves were going empty. Coruscant, the capital of the Republic with trillions of citizens, started running out of food. The Republic Navy tried to protect convoys, but there weren't enough warships to escort every transport. Most shipments simply couldn't get through. The Republic tried the direct approach. They assembled a task force of warships led by Jedi commanders and sent them to punch through the blockade near Deveron. It was a disaster. The Mandalorians were ready for them, and they knew how to fight Jedi. The Republic fleet got torn apart, losing ships and lives for nothing. The blockade held firm. As weeks turned into months, things got really bad. Rationing started in the core worlds. People who'd never worried about their next meal were suddenly standing in line for basic supplies. On Coruscant, riots broke out. Citizens who'd supported the war were now demanding peace at any price. The Senate started having emergency sessions where some senators actually suggested surrendering to the Sith Empire. Anything to get food flowing again. The Republic was about to collapse, not from military defeat, but from hunger and fear. That's when salvation came from the last place anyone expected, the criminal underworld. Hylo Vis was a Twi'lek smuggler who ran a small empire of pirates and free traders. She looked at the blockade and saw what everyone else missed, an opportunity. The Republic was desperate enough to pay anything for supplies, and Vis had a plan crazy enough to work. She gathered every smuggler, pirate, and independent captain who owed her favors or wanted to get rich. This wasn't a military fleet. It was a collection of modified freighters, stolen warships, and cobbled-together fighters. But Vis knew something the Mandalorians didn't. Smugglers fight dirty. In 3660 BBY, Vis put her plan into action. First, she loaded up slow, heavy freighters with supplies from the Outer Rim. Then she had them jump to a point near the blockade where the Mandalorians would definitely spot them. Big, fat, slow targets full of valuable cargo, impossible for warriors to resist. The Mandalorian fleet took the bait. They moved to intercept what looked like an easy prize, already calculating how much glory they'd win from capturing such a massive convoy. Their formation shifted, their attention focused on the slow freighters trying to lumber through their blockade. That's when Vis's real fleet dropped out of hyperspace behind them. Fast smuggling ships armed with illegal weapons, piloted by people who'd been running blockades their whole lives. The Mandalorians were caught completely off guard, trapped between two forces. The battle was chaos. Smuggler ships darted between the larger Mandalorian vessels, hitting them with weapons that were definitely not legal in Republic space. The freighters that had seemed so helpless suddenly revealed hidden guns, and just when things couldn't get worse for the Mandalorians, a Republic Navy squadron showed up to join the party. The Mandalorian fleet got shredded. Ships they'd used to terrorize the hyperlane were turned into floating debris. In the middle of the battle, Mandalore the Lesser himself was taken down, leaving the Mandalorian forces without leadership. The survivors scattered and ran. Just like that, the Hydian Way was open again. Supply convoys started flowing immediately. Food and supplies poured into the core worlds. The crisis was over. Hylo Vis became a legend overnight. The smuggler who saved the Republic. She also became incredibly rich from the payment she'd negotiated. But that was just a bonus. The Mandalorians retreated from the war entirely, their alliance with the Sith broken along with their fleet. The Republic had learned something important. Sometimes the best warriors aren't soldiers. Sometimes they're the people who've been breaking the rules all along. The Republic was done playing defense. After breaking the Mandalorian blockade and winning at both Awi, they finally had momentum on their side. Around 3659 BBY, Supreme Chancellor Barukan made a decision that changed everything. The Republic was going on the attack. For years they'd been losing ground, watching the Sith take planet after planet. Now it was time to take some of those planets back. The first target was Ord Radama, an outer rim world the Empire had been holding for years. This wasn't going to be another defensive stand. This was the Republic invading Sith territory. The assault on Ord Radama started perfectly. Republic forces, led by elite units and Jedi, hit the Imperial occupiers hard and fast. The Sith garrison wasn't ready for such a coordinated attack. Within days, Republic troops had taken the planet's capital city. For the first time in years, the Republic flag flew over a world they'd lost to the Empire. But taking a planet and holding it are two different things. The Imperial forces on Ord Radama weren't done fighting. Darth Malgus was there, along with another Sith Lord named Darth Venomol. They rallied the remaining Imperial troops and dug in, waiting for reinforcements from the Empire. Those reinforcements never came. The Republic had learned from their mistakes. They brought in their fleet and established complete control of the space around Ord Radama. When a small Imperial fleet tried to break through, the Republic ships tore them apart. The Sith forces on the ground were completely cut off. The fighting went on for weeks. Street by street, building by building, the Republic and Imperial forces ground each other down. Then something catastrophic happened. One of Malgus's own dreadnoughts, a massive Harrower-class warship, took critical damage in the orbital battle. The ship lost control and came crashing down toward the planet. When that dreadnought hit Ord Radama's capital, it was like a mountain falling from the sky. The explosion wiped out the entire city center. Darth Venomol was caught in the destruction, along with thousands of soldiers from both sides. The capital city that the Republic had fought so hard to take was gone in seconds. Malgus survived, but with the capital destroyed and no reinforcements coming, he had no choice but to evacuate. The remaining Imperial forces pulled out, leaving Ord Radama to the Republic. It was a victory, but looking at the smoking crater where the capital used to be, it didn't feel like one. Still, taking Ord Radama proved something important. The Republic could go on the offensive. They could take planets back from the Empire. Chancellor Dorian Generous, who'd taken over from Barukan, decided to push even harder. If they could take an outer rim world, why not go for something bigger? The target they chose was insane. Zeost was one of the ancient Sith worlds, right in the heart of Imperial space. It was just one hyperspace jump away from Dromund Kaas, the Empire's capital. Taking Zeost would be like parking an army on the Emperor's doorstep. In 3656 BBY, the Republic put their plan into action. They sent raids against Korriban and other Imperial worlds as distractions. While the Sith were dealing with those attacks, a massive Republic fleet quietly assembled and jumped straight to Zeost. The Empire was caught completely off guard. Republic forces landed on Zeost before the Sith even knew what was happening. For months, the Republic held parts of Zeost. They set up bases, besieged Sith cities, and fought off Imperial counterattacks. It looked like they might actually pull off the impossible. A Republic foothold in the heart of Sith space would change the entire war, but the Empire wasn't going to let that happen. The Sith Emperor ordered every available ship and Sith Lord to converge on Zeost. Slowly, the tide turned. The Republic forces found themselves facing more and more enemies every day. Supply lines that stretched all the way from Republic space to Zeost became harder to maintain. The bold invasion started turning into a trap. Republic commanders had to make a tough call. They could keep fighting and probably lose everything, or they could withdraw while they still had forces to save. They chose to pull out. The Republic fleet retreated from Zeost, leaving it back in Imperial hands. The Zeost campaign showed both the Republic's new strength and its limits. They could strike deep into Imperial territory, but they couldn't hold it. Not yet. The offensive had reached as far as it could go. The Republic had proven they could fight back, even reclaim some lost worlds, but completely defeating the Empire on its home ground was still beyond their reach. The war wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time in decades, it felt like a real contest instead of a slow defeat. The Republic's failed invasion of Zeost was exactly what the Sith Empire needed. After years of setbacks, defeats, and embarrassments, the Empire finally had something to rally around. The Republic had overreached, and now it was time for payback. Around 3654 BBY, the Dark Council gave Darth Malgus everything he'd been asking for. Full support, unlimited resources, and a simple mission: make the Republic pay. Malgus had survived the disasters at Alderaan and Ord Radama, and he was angrier than ever. The Dark Council promised him he'd never run out of supplies again, never be left hanging without reinforcements. This time, he'd have everything he needed to win. Malgus picked his first target carefully. Serenno was a wealthy core world, not as important as Alderaan, but still significant. Rich, noble houses, valuable industries, and close enough to the core to send a message. The Republic thought Serenno was safe. They were wrong. Before launching his invasion, Malgus did his homework. Imperial intelligence discovered that Serenno's defense was being organized by Jedi Master Ven Zallo. Take out Zallo, and Serenno's resistance would fall apart. So Malgus sent in an assassin first. One agent, one mission, one target. Ven Zallo never saw it coming. With their Jedi protector gone, Serenno's defenses crumbled. Malgus's forces swept across the planet, and the noble houses that had ruled Serenno for generations had to bend the knee to the Empire. Anyone who tried to resist found out quickly that the Sith weren't playing around. Within weeks, Serenno belonged to the Empire, giving them a foothold dangerously close to the Republic's heart. But Malgus wasn't done. The Sith Emperor himself had a special assignment for him: take back Ord Radama. The planet the Republic had captured earlier was a constant reminder of Imperial failure. The Sith Emperor wanted it back, and he wanted Malgus to be the one to take it. The Republic had learned from the first battle on Ord Radama. They'd built a new capital called New Raido and fortified it with everything they had: defensive shields, hidden gun emplacements, trap-filled approaches. They knew the Empire would come back eventually, and they were ready. When Malgus arrived with a full regiment of Sith warriors, the Republic defenders were waiting. What followed was months of grinding warfare. Every street had to be fought for. Every building became a battlefield. The Republic troops knew what they were fighting for and refused to give ground easily. But Malgus had something the Republic didn't. He had time and resources. The Empire kept sending reinforcements while the Republic struggled to resupply their garrison. Slowly, painfully, the Imperial forces pushed forward. After months of brutal fighting, New Raido fell. Ord Radamar was Imperial again. The cost was enormous. Both sides lost thousands of soldiers, and the planet itself was scarred from the fighting. But for the Empire, it was worth it. They'd taken back what was theirs and proven that Republic victories were only temporary. As the war approached its 28th year, one of the final major battles took place on Renvar, a frozen world in the Outer Rim. Darth Mekis of the Dark Council personally led the assault, and at first, everything went perfectly. The Republic forces on Renvar scattered before the Imperial advance. Another easy victory for the Empire, or so it seemed. Then Satil Shan arrived. Now a Jedi Grand Master, she brought Republic reinforcements and immediately changed the entire battle. Under her leadership, the scattered Republic forces regrouped and pushed back. The Imperials who'd been advancing suddenly found themselves retreating across the frozen wastelands. The Empire had to abandon Renvar entirely, giving the Republic one last victory to hold on to. By 3653 BBY, something strange happened. After 28 years of constant warfare, the Sith Dark Council sent a message to the Republic. They wanted to talk peace. They proposed meeting on Alderaan, neutral ground, to negotiate an end to the war. The Republic leadership was suspicious, and they had every right to be. The Jedi Council straight up said this felt like a trap. But 28 years of war had exhausted everyone. The Republic's economy was in ruins, their military was stretched to breaking, and their people were sick of fighting. Even a temporary peace would give them time to recover. So despite their suspicions, despite the Jedi warnings, the Republic agreed to the peace talks. Delegations from both sides prepared to meet on Alderaan to negotiate what would become known as the Treaty of Coruscant. The Republic diplomats thought they were going to end the war. They had no idea they were walking into the biggest trap in galactic history. The Sith weren't interested in peace. They were setting up their final, most devastating move. The peace offer was bait, and the Republic had just swallowed it whole. While Republic diplomats sat down at peace talks on Alderaan, thinking they were about to end the war, the Sith Empire pulled off the dirtiest trick in galactic history. The moment those negotiations started, a massive Sith fleet dropped out of hyperspace over Coruscant. The peace talks weren't real. They were bait to make the Republic lower its guard. Darth Angral commanded the Sith fleet that appeared in Coruscant's skies. The timing was perfect. The Republic Navy had pulled ships away from the capital, thinking the war was about to end. Why keep a huge defensive fleet around Coruscant when peace was just hours away? That decision would haunt the Republic forever. The orbital defenses around Coruscant didn't stand a chance. Angral's fleet opened fire immediately. No warnings, no demands, just devastating turbo-laser bombardment. Defense platforms that had protected the capital for centuries were turned into debris in minutes. The few Republic ships still in orbit were completely overwhelmed. The space battle was over almost before it began. But the real horror was happening on the surface. While Angral controlled the skies, Darth Malgus led a strike team straight at the Jedi Temple. Yes, that Malgus. The one who'd failed at Alderaan, lost at Ord Radama, and taken back Sereno. This was his moment of ultimate revenge. The Jedi Temple was supposed to be one of the most secure buildings in the galaxy, home to thousands of Jedi, filled with defenders, protected by both technology and the Force itself. Malgus and his hand-picked Sith warriors went through it like a thermal detonator through paper. The battle inside the temple was fast and brutal. Jedi Knights tried to organize a defense, but were caught completely off guard. Padawans who'd never seen real combat found themselves facing Sith Lords who'd been fighting for decades. Temple security forces did their best but were hopelessly outmatched. In the temple's main hall, Malgus found exactly who he was looking for. Jedi Master Venzalo, one of the Order's finest warriors, stood ready to defend the temple. The duel between them was brief but vicious. When it ended, Venzalo lay defeated, and Malgus stood over him declaring that everything was going to burn. And burn it did. The Sith didn't just want to capture the temple. They wanted to destroy it. They set fires throughout the building, ransacked the archives, stole ancient artifacts, and left the entire structure in flames. The Jedi Temple, which had stood as a symbol of peace and justice for thousands of years, was reduced to a smoking ruin in a single day. Across Coruscant, the situation was just as bad. Darth Angral's fleet dropped thousands of Sith soldiers and battle droids into the capital city. Government buildings fell within hours. Military command centers were overrun. The planetary defense grid was shut down from the inside. Coruscant hadn't seen warfare on this scale in living memory, and it showed. The worst moment came at the Senate building itself. Darth Angral personally landed there with his elite guard. He marched straight into the Senate chamber, the heart of Republic democracy, where emergency sessions were trying to figure out what was happening. Supreme Chancellor Berukin was there, trying to maintain order, trying to lead during the crisis. Angral walked up to the Chancellor's podium and ended Berukin's life right there in front of the entire Senate. No trial, no demands, just a public execution of the Republic's leader to make a point. The Sith were in charge now. They raised their banners over the Senate Plaza while senators fled in panic. Within hours, Coruscant was in complete chaos. Citizens who'd woken up that morning in the safest place in the galaxy were now living under enemy occupation. Riots broke out as people tried to flee or resist. The Sith responded by locking down the entire planet. No ships in or out. Billions of people were now hostages. Back on Alderaan, the Republic negotiators were just starting to hear what had happened. Communications from Coruscant had been cut, but fragments of emergency transmissions made it through. Their capital was burning. Their government was fallen. Their people were trapped. Grand Master Zim of the Jedi understood immediately what had happened. The Republic had been played. The peace talks were a trap, and Coruscant was the prize. He summed up their situation perfectly when he said they had no choice but to accept whatever terms the Empire demanded. With billions of hostages on Coruscant, what else could they do? The sacking of Coruscant wasn't just a military victory. It was the ultimate betrayal. The Sith had used the Republic's desire for peace as a weapon against them. They'd turned hope into despair in a single, coordinated strike. The war wasn't ending with negotiation. It was ending with the Republic on its knees. The Republic negotiators on Alderaan had no choice. With Coruscant held hostage and billions of lives hanging in the balance, they signed whatever the Sith put in front of them. In 3653 BBY, the Treaty of Coruscant was signed in Alderaan's palace halls. The Great Galactic War was officially over, and the Republic had lost. The terms of the treaty were worse than anyone could have imagined. The Republic had to immediately stand down all military forces. Every fleet had to return to port. Every army had to lay down weapons. Planets the Republic had been defending for years had to be abandoned overnight. Soldiers who'd been holding the line were ordered to pack up and leave. But that was just the beginning. The treaty forced the Republic to recognize Sith control over half the galaxy. Not just the planets the Empire had actually conquered, but huge chunks of space they'd never even attacked. The entire outer rim went to the Sith. Large pieces of the mid-rim, too. Worlds that had been Republic members for thousands of years suddenly found themselves living under Imperial rule. The Republic kept the core worlds and some of the mid-rim, but that was it. Their territory had been cut in half. They went from being the only major power in the galaxy to just one of two. The Sith Empire was now officially legitimate, recognized and in control of half of known space. The human cost was staggering. 28 years of war had left millions dead. Entire generations had grown up knowing nothing but conflict. The Republic's economy was in ruins from decades of military spending. Coruscant, the jewel of the Republic, was a smoking wreck. The Senate building where democracy had flourished for millennia was scarred by Sith boots and Chancellor Baruchan's execution. For many Republic citizens, the treaty felt like betrayal. They'd fought for nearly 3 decades only to have their leaders sign away half the galaxy. Veterans who'd lost friends, families who'd lost loved ones, entire planets who'd resisted occupation, all of them watched their sacrifices get erased with a signature. Not everyone accepted it. On planets like Balmorra and Dantooine, Republic troops straight up refused to leave. They threw down their official insignia and kept fighting as irregulars. They'd rather become outlaws than abandon the people they'd sworn to protect. These mutinies spread across the frontier, soldiers choosing their conscience over their orders. Some Jedi took it even further. Master Darnala, who'd survived Sith captivity, was so outraged by the treaty that she tried to sabotage it. She organized false flag operations, even bombing the Senate Tower, trying to make it look like the Sith had broken the peace. She figured if she could restart the war, maybe this time the Republic would win. Her plot was eventually discovered and stopped, but it showed how divided the Republic had become. The strangest part was what happened with the Sith Emperor after his victory. He'd just won the war, brought the Republic to its knees, and gained control of half the galaxy. Everyone expected him to push for total conquest while the Republic was weak. Instead, the Sith Emperor disappeared. The Emperor handed control of the Empire over to the Dark Council and vanished into the unknown regions. Nobody knew where he went or what he was doing. Some thought he was planning something even bigger. Others wondered if centuries of war had finally satisfied his need for revenge. Either way, the Sith Empire was left to be run by the Dark Council, while their Emperor pursued his own mysterious goals. The Jedi Order took the defeat particularly hard. Many citizens blamed them for not seeing the Sith threat coming, for failing to protect the Republic when it mattered most. The public that had once revered the Jedi now looked at them with disappointment and anger. Facing this hostility and needing to rebuild, the Jedi Council made a historic decision. They left Coruscant entirely. For the first time in thousands of years, there would be no Jedi temple on the capital world. Instead, they retreated to Tython, their ancient homeworld, to meditate and recover. They said they needed to reconnect with the Force, but everyone knew they were also running from the shame of defeat. The Treaty of Coruscant didn't bring peace. It brought a Cold War. The galaxy was now split between two superpowers who hated each other but couldn't afford to keep fighting. Both sides fortified their borders, built up their militaries, and engaged in espionage and proxy conflicts. Everyone knew this wasn't really over. The Great Galactic War had ended with the Republic's defeat, the Empire's victory, and a galaxy divided. But the scars ran too deep and the anger burned too hot for this peace to last. The Treaty of Coruscant hadn't ended the conflict between Republic and Empire. It had just pressed pause. Sooner or later, someone would press play again. The Treaty of Coruscant was supposed to bring peace. Instead, it brought 10 years of everyone pretending not to prepare for the next war. From 3653 to 3642 BBY, the galaxy lived in a state of Cold War. The shooting had stopped, but nobody put their guns away. Both sides knew the peace was fake. The Republic had signed under duress with Coruscant held hostage. The Empire had won through betrayal rather than conquest. Neither side was satisfied with how things ended, and everyone knew round two was coming. The only question was, when? The treaty drew new borders across the galaxy, but those borders were constantly being tested. Officially, there was peace. Unofficially, proxy wars and shadow conflicts erupted constantly. The Empire would quietly annex a neutral system here. The Republic would fortify a border world there. Both sides played dumb while obviously preparing for the real fight to resume. During these 10 years, the Republic threw everything into rebuilding. They elected a new Supreme Chancellor named Generous, someone who understood that the Republic needed to be ready when war returned. Massive reconstruction projects began on Coruscant, turning the scarred capital back into something resembling its former glory. The military got a complete overhaul, incorporating all the painful lessons learned from 28 years of defeat. On Tython, the Jedi Order was doing its own rebuilding. They constructed a new temple on their ancient homeworld and started training a new generation of Jedi Knights. Leading this effort was Grand Master Satele Shan. Yes, the same woman who'd fought Malgus on Korriban and Alderaan was now running the entire Jedi Order. She guided the Jedi away from politics, hoping to avoid the blind spots that had let the Sith surprise them before. But everyone knew that when war came again, the Jedi would be ready. Meanwhile, the Sith Empire was dealing with its own issues. They'd won the war and gained half the galaxy, but now they had to actually run it. The Dark Council governed in the Sith Emperor's absence, but without the Emperor's iron will keeping them in line, the Sith Lords started fighting among themselves. Every Sith Lord wanted more power, more territory, more influence. The infighting got so bad that Darth Baras, one of the most powerful Sith, decided to make a play for ultimate control. He started claiming he was the voice of the Emperor, the only one who could speak the Sith Emperor's will. It was a lie. But in the Empire, a convincing lie backed by enough force could become truth. While his subordinates schemed, the Sith Emperor was playing a longer game. Still hidden away pursuing his mysterious goals, he'd planted sleeper agents throughout the Republic. These children of the Emperor were regular citizens, soldiers, even Jedi who'd been secretly brainwashed to obey the Sith Emperor's commands. They lived normal lives, completely unaware they were walking bombs waiting to be activated. As the Cold War dragged on, the incidents kept piling up. On Dantooine, those Republic troops who'd refused to withdraw after the treaty were still fighting a guerrilla war against Imperial occupation. On Frozen Hoth, both sides accidentally established bases in the same region and started shooting at each other while claiming it was self-defense. Worlds like Quesh and Taris became espionage battlegrounds where spies and saboteurs did the fighting that armies couldn't. The worst incident happened when someone bombed the Senate Tower on Coruscant. Dozens of dignitaries died in an attack that looked like Sith terrorism. It was actually orchestrated by that rogue Jedi Master Darnala, still trying to restart the war. But the damage to trust was done. Both sides were now convinced the other was just waiting for the right moment to strike. By 3642 BBY, 11 years after the treaty, the Cold War was heating up fast. Both militaries were fully rebuilt and itching for action. The Republic had new fleets, new armies, and new confidence. The Empire had consolidated its conquered territories and was ready to finish what it started. The smallest spark could set off a galactic war, and there were sparks everywhere. The final straws came in rapid succession. The Jedi uncovered and eliminated several children of the Emperor before they could carry out their missions. Darth Bara's coup attempt was exposed and stopped when the real Emperor's wrath showed up and took him down in front of the entire Dark Council. With these secret gambits failing, both sides dropped the pretense of peace. The Sith Empire started openly attacking Republic positions. The Republic, instead of backing down like before, hit back twice as hard. The Treaty of Coruscant, already more fiction than fact, completely collapsed. By the end of 3642 BBY, both sides were mobilizing everything they had for all-out war. The Galactic War was about to begin. This time, there would be no surprise attacks, no unprepared defenders. Both sides knew exactly what they were getting into. The Cold War had given them 10 years to prepare, and they'd used every minute. In 3641 BBY, the Sith Empire decided they were done pretending. No more cold peace, no more shadow games, no more treaties. They launched attacks on dozens of Republic worlds at the same time. The Galactic War had begun, and this time both sides knew exactly what they were fighting for. Master Seo Bakan of the Jedi Council watched the reports come in and summed it up perfectly. The Empire had launched a devastating offensive. Dozens of major systems were under attack. Every hour brought news of more losses. An Imperial ambush had nearly broken the Republic fleet in pieces. This wasn't like the surprise attack 40 years ago. This was the Empire trying to finish what they'd started. The difference this time was that the Republic was ready. They'd spent 10 years preparing for exactly this moment. Their fleets were rebuilt, their armies were trained, and their defenders knew what was coming. But even with all that preparation, the early months were rough. The Empire came at the Republic with everything they had. They didn't have surprise on their side anymore, so they relied on overwhelming force and smart targeting. They hit planets that were still rebuilding from the last conflict, knowing these worlds would be vulnerable. Balmorra became one of the first major battlegrounds. The Empire had occupied it since the treaty, but Republic sympathizers had never stopped resisting. When the treaty collapsed, that resistance exploded into a full uprising. Republic forces backed the rebels and actually managed to push the Imperial occupiers out. It was an early victory that gave the Republic hope. But the Empire hit back hard. On Taris, the Republic had been trying to rebuild the ruined world for years. They'd invested massive resources in terraforming and resettlement. The Empire took one look at all that work and decided to wreck it. Imperial bombardment turned years of reconstruction into rubble. The message was clear. The Empire would destroy anything the Republic tried to build. These early battles showed that neither side could easily overwhelm the other. Every victory came with a setback. Every advance met resistance. This wasn't going to be a quick conflict like everyone expected. It was going to be a grinding struggle. Making things worse, both sides discovered enemies within their own ranks. The Cold War had given spies and traitors 10 years to dig in deep. The Sith, Emperor's children of the Emperor, were suddenly activating all across Republic space. These sleeper agents, who didn't even know they were Imperial assets, started sabotaging the Republic from within. The Jedi Order sent out specialized hunters to track down these children. A Jedi known as the Barson-Thor led the effort, traveling to worlds like Corellia and Voss to root out the hidden agents. One by one, the children were discovered and stopped before they could carry out their missions. It was like defusing bombs that had been planted years ago and were just now going off. The Empire had its own internal problems. Right as the fighting started, Darth Barras made his move. He announced to the entire Empire that he was the voice of the Emperor. Since nobody had heard from the Sith Emperor in years, some people actually believed him. This led to a brief but vicious power struggle within the Empire. Barras had supporters, but he also had enemies. His own former apprentice, who'd been named the Emperor's Wrath, challenged Barras's claim. They settled it the Sith way, with a duel right in front of the Dark Council. When Barras fell, his coup attempt collapsed. The Empire avoided a civil conflict, but the disruption came at the worst possible time. Early in the fighting, Imperial forces made a shocking discovery. The Republic had a secret prison world called Belsavis, where they kept the worst criminals in the galaxy. Not just regular criminals, but Sith Lords, dangerous aliens, and others too dangerous to keep anywhere else. The Empire immediately attacked Belsavis, turning the prison world into a battlefield. In the chaos, countless prisoners escaped. The worst escapees were the 6 Dread Masters, those Sith Lords of Terror who'd been captured decades earlier. They vanished into the galaxy, and everyone knew that would come back to haunt both sides later. After these opening moves, the conflict spread everywhere. Unlike the Great War with its slow advance and periods of quiet, this galactic war was constant escalation. Peaceful worlds that had enjoyed a decade of recovery suddenly found themselves under attack again. Trade routes became battle zones. Space itself became dangerous as fleets clashed throughout the galaxy. The Republic held the core worlds firmly, their industrial base and population centers secure. The Empire controlled vast territories, but faced a Republic military that had learned from past defeats. Both sides knew that controlling a few key worlds could tip the balance. Supreme Commander Jace Malcolm took charge of Republic forces after early battles. On the Imperial side, the Dark Council coordinated their military might. Both leaders understood that the next major confrontation would be crucial. That confrontation would come at Corellia, one of the most important worlds in the galaxy. Corellia wasn't just another planet. It was one of the Republic's founding worlds, an industrial giant that built half their starships and home to billions of people. In 3640 BBY, the Sith Empire decided to take it. If they succeeded, the Republic would lose their shipyards, their morale, and possibly the entire conflict. The Empire had been planning this for years. During the Cold War, Imperial intelligence hadn't been sitting idle. They'd been buying Corellian politicians, corrupting corporate executives, and turning security officials into traitors. By the time the fighting resumed, the Empire had an entire network of collaborators ready to help them take the planet from the inside. Darth Decimus led the invasion. He'd spent months secretly negotiating with these corrupt officials, promising them power and wealth if they helped the Empire. When his forces arrived, gates that should have been locked swung open. Defense systems that should have been active stayed quiet. Key facilities fell into Imperial hands overnight because the people protecting them had already switched sides. But not all Corellians were traitors. Most stayed loyal to the Republic, and when they realized what was happening, they fought back hard. What followed was some of the worst urban fighting the galaxy had ever seen. Coronet City, Corellia's capital, became a battlefield where every street corner mattered. The Republic rushed their best forces to Corellia: elite soldiers, Jedi Knights, special forces units, even smugglers and independent fighters, all converged on the planet. The Empire had taken buildings, but now they had to hold them against defenders who knew every alley and shortcut in their own cities. The fighting was building by building, block by block. Imperial forces would capture a district in the morning, and Republic fighters would take it back by nightfall. Shipyards changed hands multiple times. Government buildings became fortresses. The beautiful cities of Corellia were torn apart as two armies ground against each other. For the civilians caught in the middle, it was a nightmare. Millions of people who'd just been living their lives suddenly found themselves in a combat zone. They couldn't leave because the Empire had blockaded the planet. They couldn't stay safe because the fighting was everywhere. Families huddled in basements while battles raged above them. But the Sith Emperor had darker plans for Corellia than just conquest. He saw all this chaos and suffering as an opportunity. The Sith Emperor planned to use a dark side ritual to consume the life force of everyone on Corellia, feeding on their fear and pain to make himself even more powerful. He'd tried this before during the Great War, but this time he had a new strategy. The Sith Emperor manipulated several Jedi Masters into helping him. Master Tol Braga and others fell to the dark side, corrupted by the Sith Emperor's influence. These fallen Jedi worked to activate a thermal resonator deep in Corellia's core. If it went off, it would crack the planet open and end every life on Corellia, feeding all that energy directly to the Sith Emperor. This insane plan was stopped by a Jedi Knight who would later be known as the Hero of Tython. This Jedi confronted the corrupted Master Braga and his team, fighting through the Sith Emperor's influence to either redeem them or stop them. The thermal resonator was deactivated just in time. The Sith Emperor's ritual failed, but the fact that he'd even tried showed how far he was willing to go. While that dark plot was unfolding underground, the surface battle reached its climax. The key to victory was Corellia's government district and shipyards. Whoever controlled those controlled the planet. Darth Decimus threw everything he had at defending them, but the Republic forces kept pushing. The turning point came when Republic forces, led by heroes like the spy Theron Shan and Supreme Commander Jace Malcolm's troops, finally broke through to the shipyards. Without those facilities, the Empire couldn't bring in reinforcements or resupply their forces. Their advance stalled, then reversed. Corellian resistance fighters, Ordinary citizens who'd taken up arms to defend their home played a huge role. They knew their city better than any invader could. They sabotaged Imperial supply lines, guided Republic forces through hidden routes, and made the occupation impossible to maintain. One by one, Imperial positions fell. Darth Decimus himself was defeated in battle, and without their commander, Imperial forces lost coordination. The retreat turned into a rout. After weeks of devastating combat, Corellia remained in Republic hands. The victory came at a terrible cost. Corellia's cities were in ruins. Millions of civilians had suffered. The planet would need years to recover. But strategically, it was massive. The Republic had kept their shipyards, denied the Empire a core world, and proved they could win even when the enemy had every advantage. Jace Malcolm, who'd fought in the battle, was promoted to Supreme Commander of the entire Republic military. His promotion, announced right after another Republic victory on Elam, marked a turning point. The Republic wasn't just surviving anymore. They were winning. For the Empire, Corellia was a disaster. They'd thrown massive resources at taking the planet and failed. Their momentum was gone. Other worlds saw that the Empire could be beaten and started their own resistance movements. The easy victories of the early conflict were over. From here on, every battle would be a struggle. After winning at Corellia, the Republic decided to go for the throat. They'd spent decades fighting the Sith Empire, and now they wanted to end it once and for all. The target was Dromund Kaas, the Imperial capital, and the mission was simple, but insane. Find Emperor Vitiate and take him down. Leading this suicide mission was the Jedi Knight who'd stopped the Sith Emperor's ritual on Corellia, the one history would call the Hero of Tython. This wasn't going to be a massive invasion. That would never work. Instead, a small strike team of the Republic's best fighters would sneak onto Dromund Kaas and go straight for the Sith Emperor himself. Getting to Dromund Kaas was hard enough. The planet was the most heavily defended world in the Empire, surrounded by fleets and protected by countless Sith. But while the Republic fleet created a distraction in orbit, fighting the Imperial First Defense Fleet, the strike team slipped through and landed on the surface. Their destination was the Dark Temple, an ancient fortress where the Sith Emperor had made his home. The strike team fought through waves of Imperial guards and Sith defenders, pushing deeper into the temple. Every step took them closer to something most people thought was impossible: a direct confrontation with the immortal Emperor who'd started this whole conflict. The Hero of Tython had help. Lord Scourge, a Sith who'd turned against the Sith Emperor centuries ago, guided them through the temple. The spirit of Master August Din, the hero's deceased teacher, provided strength through the Force. But when they finally reached the Sith Emperor's throne room, the hero had to face the Emperor alone. What they found wasn't exactly the Sith Emperor's real body. It was something called the Emperor's voice, a physical host that the Sith Emperor possessed and spoke through. But it contained enough of the Sith Emperor's power to be one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The duel that followed was unlike anything in the records. The Sith Emperor attacked with pure dark side energy, trying to break the hero's mind before even drawing a weapon. He showed visions of the hero's fears, promised unlimited power, and unleashed Force attacks that should have torn any normal person apart. But the Hero of Tython held firm. Drawing on the light side of the Force and the support of allies, The Jedi resisted the Sith Emperor's mental assault and engaged him with lightsabers. The battle raged through the throne room, two masters of the Force pushing each other to their limits. In the end, the impossible happened. The hero found an opening and struck down the Emperor's voice. The Sith Emperor's physical form crumbled, and for a moment, it seemed like the 1,000-year-old Emperor was finally dead. Except he wasn't. Not really. The Sith Emperor's consciousness, his actual essence, survived the destruction of his body. Badly wounded and weakened, the Sith Emperor's spirit fled into the darkest corners of the Force to hide and recover. He was effectively out of the fight, unable to lead his empire or continue his dark plans. But he wasn't truly gone. Here's the crazy part. Nobody talked about it. The Republic had just achieved one of the greatest victories in galactic history, and they kept it secret. They worried that without proof of the Sith Emperor's defeat, nobody would believe them. Plus, they'd sent the strike team on what everyone thought was a suicide mission. Admitting they'd succeeded would mean explaining how they knew the Sith Emperor's location in the first place. The Sith Empire also kept quiet about losing their Emperor. The Dark Council took over running the Empire and pretended the Sith Emperor was just in seclusion, focusing on some mysterious project. They couldn't afford to let their citizens or enemies know that their immortal leader had been struck down. It would cause panic and possibly collapse the entire empire. So the conflict continued as if nothing had happened. Imperial forces kept fighting under the Dark Council's leadership. Republic forces kept defending their territory. Most people on both sides had no idea that the Emperor who'd orchestrated this entire conflict was effectively gone. Without the Sith Emperor's iron will holding them together, the Sith Empire started to fragment. Different Sith lords began pursuing their own agendas. Some wanted to continue the assault on the Republic. Others wanted to consolidate power for themselves. The Empire didn't collapse, but it lost its unified purpose. The conflict changed from a clash between two clear sides into something messier. New factions emerged, old alliances shifted, and everyone scrambled to fill the power vacuum left by the Sith Emperor's absence. The removal of the Emperor hadn't ended the fighting. It had just made it more complicated. For the Republic, the Sith Emperor's defeat was both a victory and a warning. They'd proven that even the most powerful Sith could be beaten, but they'd also learned that removing one threat just meant others would rise to take its place. The Galactic War was entering a new phase, and nobody knew what would come next. The hero of Tython had done the impossible, struck down a being who'd lived for over 1,000 years. But in the galaxy, even defeating an immortal emperor wasn't enough to bring peace. The fighting would continue, just with different people calling the shots. With Emperor Vitiate gone, the galaxy turned into a free-for-all. Everyone who'd been waiting in the shadows suddenly saw their chance to grab power. The first to make his move was someone nobody expected: Darth Malgus. Malgus had been the Empire's attack dog for decades. He'd fought at Korriban, Alderaan, Ord, Radama, and Corellia. But watching the Dark Council bicker while pretending the Sith Emperor was still around disgusted him. In 3640 BBY, right after a major battle on Ilum, Malgus decided he'd had enough. He seized control of the Emperor's space station orbiting Ilum and got his hands on the Empire's secret stealth fleet. Then Malgus did something that shocked everyone. He declared himself Emperor of a completely new empire. Not the old Sith Empire with its ancient traditions and pure bloodline obsessions. Malgus wanted an empire where strength mattered more than species. He actually planned to treat aliens as equals, which was basically heresy for traditional Sith. This put the Republic in a weird position. Suddenly, the Sith Empire's loyalists needed help dealing with Malgus. The enemy of their enemy had become a temporary friend. Republic heroes and Imperial loyalists who'd been trying to destroy each other just days before now had to work together. The assault on Malgus's space station was surreal. Republic soldiers and Sith warriors fighting side by side against Malgus's army of droids and followers. The strike teams pushed through the station until they reached Malgus himself. The final battle was brutal. Multiple reports claim Malgus got thrown down a reactor shaft, though his body was never recovered. Some people still insist he survived somehow. With Malgus gone, his new empire instantly collapsed, but the damage was done. The Sith Empire had lost one of its best commanders, and everyone had seen how fragile Imperial unity really was without the Sith Emperor holding it together. While the two empires were fighting each other, the Hutt cartel decided to make their play. The Hutts had been selling weapons to both sides throughout the conflict, getting rich off everyone else's misery. Now they wanted more than money. They wanted to rule. Karaga the Unyielding, the Hutt cartel's supreme mogul, started taking over neutral systems and building his own empire. He actually tried to claim the Hutts were the galaxy's rightful rulers, which would have been funny if he hadn't had the firepower to back it up. Republic and Imperial forces had to team up again, attacking Karaga's palace on Nalhuta. They took down Karaga, but the Hutts weren't finished. In 3638 BBY, the cartel tried something cleverer. They quietly took over a planet called Makeb, where scientists had just discovered Isotope 5, a hyperfuel that could revolutionize space travel. The Hutts figured whoever controlled Isotope 5 could dictate terms to everyone else. They occupied Makeb and threatened to destroy the planet if anyone interfered. The problem was that Hutt mining operations were destabilizing Makeb's core. The whole planet was going to tear itself apart. Republic heroes managed to evacuate the civilians and stabilize the planet, forcing the Hutts to back down. The Empire secretly grabbed some Isotope 5 for themselves during the chaos, but the Hutt cartel's dream of becoming a superpower died on Makeb. Then came the nightmare everyone had been dreading. Remember those 6 Dreadmasters who escaped from Belsavis? They'd been quietly building a cult of followers on a moon called Oricon. By 3637 BBY, they were ready to announce themselves to the galaxy. The Dreadmasters didn't want to rule. They wanted everyone to suffer. They sent out waves of fear through the Force, driving entire populations insane. They created monsters that shouldn't exist, corrupted beings with dark side energy, and turned normal people into terror-driven fanatics. Republic and Empire both suffered their attacks. For once, both sides agreed completely. The Dread Masters had to be stopped. This wasn't about politics or territory. This was about survival. Joint strike forces from the Republic and Empire attacked Oricon together, not reluctantly working alongside each other, like with Malgus, but actually coordinating their attacks. The fortress on Oricon was a nightmare made real. The strike teams faced their worst fears brought to life. Creatures that defied description and the Dread Masters' psychological attacks. But working together, they pushed through. One by one, all 6 Dread Masters fell. Their reign of terror ended, and their cult scattered. The victory over the Dread Masters showed something important. When faced with a big enough threat, Republic and Empire could work together. Individual soldiers and Sith were learning to see past their differences when survival was on the line. It wouldn't stop the conflict, but it planted seeds that would matter later. The galaxy had become impossibly complicated. Instead of Republic versus Empire, there were dozens of factions all fighting for their peace. Malgus's rebellion, the Hutt power grab, the Dreadmaster's terror campaign, all of it happened within just a few years. The old rules were breaking down, and nobody knew what would replace them. "300 years before this conflict, there was a Jedi named Revan who became a Sith, then found redemption and saved the Republic from the ancient Sith Empire. He was the greatest hero of his age. In the late 3630s BBY, Revan came back. But the hero everyone remembered had become something much more dangerous. Here's what nobody knew. The immortal Emperor had kept Revan imprisoned in stasis for 3 centuries, torturing him, trying to break his mind and steal his secrets. When the hero of Tython struck down the Sith Emperor on Dromund Kaas, the chaos freed Revan. But 300 years of torment had changed him. Revan was free, but he wasn't the same person anymore. Revan had become obsessed with one idea. The only way to bring peace to the galaxy was to completely eliminate both the Sith Empire and the Sith Emperor himself. Not defeat them, not contain them, but wipe them out entirely. To achieve this, Revan built a secret society called the Order of Revan, recruiting fanatics from both Republic and Empire who believed in his vision. The Revanites infiltrated military units on both sides, working their way into positions where they could manipulate events. Their plan was insane but simple. Trick the Republic and Empire into destroying each other completely, then finish off whatever was left. Revan figured if both sides wiped each other out, the galaxy could finally start fresh. In 3637 BBY, the plan almost worked. Revanite agents on both sides started feeding false intelligence to their commanders. Republic forces were told the Empire was massing for a massive attack. Imperial forces got reports of Republic fleets preparing for invasion. Both sides mobilized everything they had and prepared for what would have been the biggest battle of the entire conflict. The conspiracy was exposed on a planet called Rishi. Republic and Imperial heroes investigating strange events independently discovered Revanite agents trying to trigger the battle. When Darth Maul of the Dark Council and Grandmaster Satil Shan of the Jedi compared notes, they realized someone was playing both sides. For the first time in the conflict, the highest leaders of both factions called a ceasefire. Not a treaty or peace agreement, just a temporary halt to figure out who was manipulating them. When they discovered it was Revan, these sworn enemies agreed to work together. The legend who'd once saved the galaxy had become a threat to everyone. The combined task force tracked Revan to Yavin 4, a jungle moon soaked in dark side energy from ancient Sith rituals. In the ruins of a Masasi temple, they found Revan attempting something that made no sense at first. He was trying to resurrect the Sith Emperor. Revan's logic was twisted but clear. The Sith Emperor's essence had survived being struck down, hiding somewhere in the Force. Revan believed the only way to permanently destroy the Sith Emperor was to bring him back in physical form first, then eliminate him completely. The problem was that resurrecting the Sith Emperor might unleash his full power on the galaxy. Republic and Imperial forces attacked the temple together, not reluctantly, not temporarily, but as genuine allies against a common threat. Soldiers who'd been fighting each other for years stood side by side against Revan's followers. Darth Maul and Satil Shan personally led strike teams into the temple depths. Revan was waiting for them, wielding both the purple and red lightsabers that symbolized his complicated past. The battle was incredible. Revan had 3 centuries of experience, tactical genius, and raw force power. He fought like someone with nothing left to lose because, in his mind, the galaxy's future depended on his victory. But even Revan couldn't stand against the combined might of the galaxy's champions. Sith Lords, Jedi Masters, elite soldiers from both sides, all working together, finally overwhelmed him. In his final moments, something changed in Revan. The madness that had driven him cleared, and he saw what he'd become. His physical form dissolved into the Force, finally at peace after 3 centuries of torment. The Order of Revan fell apart without their leader, but Revan's plan had succeeded in ways nobody expected. His ritual on Yavin 4 actually did draw out the Sith Emperor's essence from hiding. The former Emperor, now a pure dark side spirit, fled Yavin and headed for the imperial world of Ziost. What happened on Ziost in 3636 BBY was pure nightmare. The Sith Emperor, now just a malevolent consciousness, possessed thousands of imperial citizens. He made them turn on each other in mindless violence. Then, when the carnage wasn't enough, the Sith Emperor did something monstrous. He drained the life force of every living thing on Ziost. Every person, every animal, every plant, everything died in an instant. Ziost became a dead world. Its surface turned to ash and lifeless rock. The Sith Emperor had consumed millions of lives to restore his power. Then he vanished, stronger than ever and completely unhinged. The Republic and Empire had thought their worst enemy was gone. Instead, he'd returned as something even more dangerous. Revan's return had started as a conspiracy and ended with an entire world dead. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Sith Emperor was planning his next move. In 3636 BBY, while the Republic and Sith Empire were beating each other senseless, a third empire showed up and crushed them both. The Eternal Empire of Zakul came out of nowhere with technology nobody had seen and an agenda nobody understood. Within 3 months, they'd done what neither the Republic nor the Sith could do in decades of fighting. They'd won everything. The first sign of trouble came when strange warships started appearing at the edges of known space. These weren't Sith vessels or Republic cruisers. They were something completely different. Sleek, golden, and armed with weapons that made standard shields look like tissue paper. By the time anyone figured out these ships belonged to something called the Eternal Empire, it was already too late. Leading this invasion were twin brothers, Arkan and Thexan, sons of Emperor Valkorion of Zakul. Nobody in the Republic or Empire had heard of Valkorion before. They were about to find out that was because Valkorion was actually another identity of the Sith Emperor. After consuming Ziost, the Sith Emperor had returned to his secret empire that he'd been building for centuries in the unknown regions. Zakul's attacks were perfectly coordinated and devastating. They hit both Republic and Imperial targets at the same time, making it impossible for either side to respond effectively. Korriban fell to them in hours, not days or weeks like in previous battles, but hours. The Sith homeworld that had changed hands so many times was taken by Zakul like it was nothing. The Eternal Fleet pushed straight into the core worlds next. Their technology was so advanced that Republic and Imperial ships couldn't even scratch them. automated warships that never needed rest, never made mistakes, and could coordinate perfectly through something called the Gemini droids. Every battle was a massacre. Making things worse were the Knights of Zakuul. These weren't Jedi or Sith. They were Force users who followed a completely different philosophy, trained in combat techniques neither Republic nor Empire had seen before. They carved through traditional defenders like they were amateurs. Darth Maul, who'd basically been running the Sith Empire since the Sith Emperor disappeared, knew they had to act fast. He did something unthinkable. He reached out to Grandmaster Satele Shan and proposed they work together to stop Valkorion. The fact that these two leaders were willing to cooperate showed just how desperate things had become. The joint Republic-Imperial fleet tracked Valkorion to wild space. It should have been their moment of triumph. Instead, it was a complete disaster. The Eternal Fleet tore them apart. Ships that had survived decades of warfare were turned into debris in minutes. Heroes from both factions were captured or fell in battle. Darth Maul confronted Valkorion personally aboard the Zakuul flagship. The old Sith warrior, who'd survived everything the galaxy could throw at him, was struck down by Valkorion without ceremony. The witness to this confrontation, a veteran fighter known as the Outlander, was captured and frozen in carbonite by Arcann. With their best fighters gone, both Republic and Empire were defenseless. Then came the final humiliation. The Eternal Fleet surrounded both Coruscant and Dromund Kaas simultaneously, not attacking them like the Sith had done decades before, but blockading them completely. Nothing in, nothing out. Both capital worlds were held hostage by a force they couldn't fight. In the middle of this conquest, something unexpected happened. Arcann turned on his own father. During a meeting aboard the flagship, with the frozen Outlander as the only witness, Arcann struck down Valkorion. Some say Valkorion let it happen, maybe even planned it. Either way, the immortal Emperor who'd plagued the galaxy for over 1,000 years finally fell. Arcann immediately declared himself the new Emperor of Zakuul. He blamed Valkorion's death on the Republic and Empire, using it as propaganda to justify even harsher treatment. Under Arcann, Zakuul's occupation became a stranglehold. Within 3 months of their first appearance, Zakuul had achieved total victory. The Eternal Fleet destroyed every shipyard that could build warships, eliminated any fleet that could mount resistance, and positioned massive star fortresses over hundreds of worlds. These fortresses could suppress an entire planet by themselves. By 3635 BY, both the Republic and Sith Empire formally surrendered. They had to disarm most of their military, pay massive tributes to Zakuul, and accept Arcann's rule. The Republic's Chancellor Saresh was forced out and replaced with the weaker Chancellor Madon. The Sith Dark Council basically ceased to exist, with Darth Asina declaring herself Empress of what was left of the Sith Empire. For the first time in decades, Republic and Empire stopped fighting each other. Not because they'd made peace, but because they were both servants to the same master. Old grudges still existed, but any sign of military buildup or cooperation was immediately crushed by Zakuul. The Galactic War that had consumed the galaxy for years didn't end with Republic victory or Sith domination. It ended with both sides on their knees before an empire they hadn't even known existed. Zakuul had done in 3 months what neither faction had managed in decades of conflict. They'd conquered the entire galaxy. "5 years. That's how long the galaxy lived under Zakuul's boot before someone finally did something about it. In 3631 BY, the Resistance began with a prison break that would change everything. Remember the Outlander, that veteran fighter who got frozen in carbonite after witnessing Valkorion's death? They'd been sitting in Arcan's trophy room for 5 years. Then 2 people decided enough was enough. Lana Beniko, a former Sith Lord who'd given up on the Empire's weakness, and Theron Shan, son of Satil Shan, and a Republic spy who'd gone rogue. These 2 couldn't stand each other normally, but they agreed on one thing. Someone had to fight back. The rescue mission was insane. They infiltrated Zakuul itself, the capital of the Eternal Empire, broke into Arcan's prison, and thawed out the Outlander. Their escape got help from the strangest sources. Scorpio, a Zakuulan droid with her own mysterious agenda, and an ancient warship called the Gravestone that they literally stumbled across while running. The Outlander woke up to a galaxy that had completely changed. Republic and Empire, both servants to Zakuul, old enemies working as janitors in Arcan's palace, and everyone too beaten down to resist. But Lana and Theron had a plan. If the old powers couldn't fight Zakuul, they'd build something new. They called it simply the Alliance. No fancy titles, no ancient traditions, just people who wanted to fight back. They set up base on Odessan, a planet hidden in wild space that was strong in the Force. From there, they started recruiting anyone willing to stand up to Arcan. The Alliance was the weirdest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Republic soldiers fought alongside Sith warriors. Jedi Masters planned operations with Dark Lords. Mandalorian clans worked with smuggler cartels. People who'd been trying to destroy each other for decades suddenly found themselves in the same meetings, eating at the same tables, training in the same facilities. The Outlander became the Alliance commander, mainly because they were the only person everyone could respect. Republic forces knew their war record. Sith recognized their power. Independents saw them as someone who'd suffered under Zakuul just like everyone else. It wasn't about being the strongest or smartest. It was about being the one person everyone could follow. By 3630 BBY, the Alliance had grown from a handful of rebels to a real fighting force. Not huge, but every member was there because they chose to be. No conscripts, no prisoners forced to fight, just people who'd had enough of Zakuul's oppression. Their secret weapon was the Gravestone. This ancient alien ship had technology that could actually disable Eternal Fleet vessels. For the first time, someone had a weapon that could hurt Zakuul's automated armada. The Alliance used it to hit Zakuul where it hurt. Supply depots disappeared overnight. Star fortresses suddenly lost power and crashed. Zakuulan installations exploded for no apparent reason. One of their biggest early victories came at a shadow port called Asylum. Zakuul forces attacked, trying to crush the Alliance when it was still small. Instead, the Alliance fighters held them off and actually won. Word spread that someone had beaten Zakuul in a straight fight. Recruits started pouring in, including some unexpected ones. Zakuulan exiles who hated what Arcan had become. Even members of Zakuul's royal family who'd been cast out. Arcan couldn't let this stand. He tracked the Alliance to Odessan and launched a full assault. This wasn't a raid or skirmish. This was Arcan bringing everything he could spare to crush the rebellion personally. The Battle of Odessan should have been the Alliance's last stand. Zakuul had superior numbers, better equipment, and the Eternal Fleet backing them up. But the Alliance had something else. They had people fighting for their freedom instead of their Emperor's ego. The battle raged across Odessan's surface. Jedi and Sith stood back to back, deflecting blaster fire. Mandalorian commandos led charges against Zakuulan knights. Smugglers flew supply runs through active combat zones. And in the middle of it all, something unexpected happened. Scorpio, that droid who'd helped rescue the Outlander, revealed her true plan. She seized control of the Eternal Fleet, turning Arcane's greatest weapon against him. With his fleet compromised and his ground forces taking heavy losses, Arcane's invasion fell apart. The Alliance pushed their advantage, fighting their way to Arcane's command ship. The commander confronted Arcane personally and defeated him in combat. Badly wounded and abandoned by his forces, Arcane had no choice but to surrender. In a twist nobody saw coming, he later sought refuge with the Alliance, hunted by his own family. But the victory was short-lived. Arcane's younger sister Vaylin took the throne. If Arcane had been brutal, Vaylin was psychotic. She didn't just want to rule. She wanted to watch everything burn. With Scorpio's help, she took control of the Eternal Fleet and promised to destroy the Alliance completely. The war had entered a new phase, but something fundamental had changed. The Alliance had proven Zakuul could be beaten. The myth of the Eternal Empire's invincibility was broken. People across the galaxy saw that resistance was possible, that freedom could be won. The Alliance had given the galaxy something it had lost: hope. Vaylin was worse than her brother Arcane in every possible way. Where Arcane had been brutal, Vaylin was unhinged. She took the Eternal Throne in 3629 BBY and immediately started punishing entire worlds just for thinking about joining the Alliance. Her idea of ruling was simple: fear everyone into submission. And if that doesn't work, destroy them completely. The problem for Vaylin was that her cruelty backfired. Every world she attacked, every city she burned, just sent more recruits running to the Alliance. People figured if they were going to suffer either way, they might as well fight back. The Alliance grew stronger with every atrocity Vaylin committed. During these dark months, something remarkable happened. The old enemies started openly helping each other. Empress Asina of the Sith Empire started sending supplies and intelligence to the Alliance. Not secretly anymore, but officially. Republic leaders did the same. Even Mandalore Shae Vizsla brought her clans fully into the Alliance. The moment that really showed things had changed came when the planet Voss was invaded by Zakuul. The Sith Empire formally joined the Alliance attack to liberate it. Sith and Republic forces planned the operation together, fought side by side, and celebrated the victory as allies. Nobody could have imagined that happening just a few years earlier. The Alliance knew they had to stop Vaylin before she destroyed half the galaxy in her rage. They discovered something crucial. Vaylin had been conditioned as a child with mental blocks to control her incredible force powers. The Alliance learned the ritual that could activate these blocks and weaken her. It was their only chance. In 3628 BBY, they set the trap. When Vaylin launched a massive assault on Odessen to wipe out the Alliance completely, they were ready. Vaylin's forces threw everything at the Alliance base, but the defenders held. Alliance fighters used the ritual to disrupt Vaylin's connection to the Force, weakening her for the first time in her life. The final confrontation came down to the Alliance commander and their closest companions against Vaylin herself. Even weakened, she was incredibly dangerous. But without her full power, without her invincibility, Vaylin fell. Her defeat sent shockwaves through Zakuul's forces. Their empress was gone. Arcan had switched sides, and Scorpio was pursuing her own mysterious agenda with the Eternal Fleet. The Alliance didn't wait. They immediately launched their assault on Zakuul itself. Using captured Eternal Fleet ships they'd reprogrammed, combined with their original forces, they attacked the capital of the Eternal Empire. The battle for Zakuul was the largest engagement since the original invasion. The Alliance faced the full Eternal Fleet and thousands of Zakuulan knights protecting their homeworld. The key was the royal palace and the Eternal Throne itself. The Alliance commander fought through the palace defenses and reached the throne room. By claiming the Eternal Throne, they gained control of the entire Eternal Fleet through the throne's connection to the Gemini droids. But there was one last enemy to face: the Sith Emperor's spirit, which had been hiding inside the commander's mind since Valkorion's defeat made his final play. The ancient emperor tried to possess the commander's body permanently, to use them as his new vessel to rule the galaxy forever. This last battle wasn't fought with lightsabers or blasters. It was fought in the mind. The commander, aided by the spirits of those who'd opposed the Sith Emperor across the centuries, including Revan himself according to some accounts, finally destroyed the Sith Emperor's essence completely. The Emperor who'd plagued the galaxy for over 1,000 years, who'd started the Great Galactic War, who'd consumed entire worlds, was finally gone forever. With the Eternal Throne under Alliance control, the Eternal Empire surrendered. The war that had begun with Zakuul's shocking invasion was over. But instead of becoming another tyrannical empire, the Alliance transformed into something new. They called themselves the Eternal Alliance, a peacekeeping force that would use the Eternal Fleet to prevent future conflicts rather than start them. The commander chose not to become another emperor. They worked with Senya Tyrol, Valkorion's widow, to help Zakuul transition from conqueror to partner. Even Arcan, having fought alongside the Alliance against his sister, stayed to help rebuild. The Eternal Empire that had terrorized the galaxy became just another member of the new Alliance. For a brief moment, the galaxy had achieved something like balance. Three major powers existed: the Republic, the Sith Empire under Empress Asina, and the Eternal Alliance. All three were too exhausted to fight, and the Alliance's Eternal Fleet kept everyone honest. It was the closest thing to peace the galaxy had seen in decades. But old habits die hard. By 3625 BBY, just a few years after Zakuul's defeat, the Republic and Sith Empire were at each other's throats again. Border skirmishes turned into battles. Battles turned into campaigns. The Third Galactic War had begun, proving that some conflicts never really end. The Great Galactic War and the Galactic War had reshaped the galaxy completely. Empires had risen and fallen. Worlds had been destroyed and rebuilt. Heroes had become villains. Enemies had become allies, and through it all, the eternal struggle between light and dark continued. Because in that galaxy far, far away, peace never lasts. There's always another empire rising, another war brewing, another throne to fight over. The players change, the weapons evolve, but the conflict continues, always.